I remember my parents would take me to the record store and basically I would pick records based on what I thought was a nice looking cover.
Right.
Just sort of like this one and pick that one. So I think it was the Beatles' White Album. It was a Chicago album and some other, like just sort of 70s, 60s, 70s rock. And my parents bought those albums and I kind of got introduced to that, which was, I don't think I think as a kid, you don't put these boundaries on things, right? You're more likely to just be open to everything.
Right.
And it's only when someone else says, oh, these two things are not alike and you must judge one and, pick one over the other, right? That kid looks like that and they're not one of us and this kid's okay. And this music's good and this music's bad. That didn't happen. So I just sort of, I was just sort of open to everything. Later on, certainly when I got into my tweens and then teens, I got into rock music and then metal, and then music got progressively heavier as I went through my teenage years. And I never felt like, oh, classical music is dumb, I don't want to hear it. I always enjoyed listening to it, but it wasn't something I identified with.
It's so funny because you sort of hit on a point that is a little, personal bias or whatever, but like I remember going into, the first time I'd start driving in northern Ontario or whatever, and you'd find these radio stations that literally would be playing a rap song followed by a country song followed by whatever. And that to me was like the fucking Twilight Zone.
Right.
Because coming from Windsor, like this is like from day one, music is segregated in this area, right?
Yeah.
Like there is a rock station, there is a rap station. It's really interesting because like classical, forget it. Like classical was like nerd shit, right? And it's funny because even thinking about coming from a background where that isn't even a base to have is really interesting to me.
Yeah, and I don't think that's something that was necessarily instilled or not instilled by my parents. I mean, the classical music world is incredibly, I think, as a matter of, just, I think generally speaking, is very segregated, is very, this is good and this is bad, and they definitely are very snobby, basically. Just sort of speaking of this, one of my favorite stories is Marty Friedman, the former guitar player that was with Megadeth for a few years. He ended up moving to Japan. And when you watch, I can't remember where he appeared, but I was watching some sort of a documentary, and he sort of appeared in this documentary. And I think it was that metal, like the documentary about metal around the world.
Right.
So they're interviewing Marty Friedman, and he's in Japan now. And he like appears on game shows and like he's like a little minor celebrity there.
Right.
And he said, man, when I came to Japan, I just fell in love with the place because they don't discern between like there's no quality discernation between discernation. Is that a word? No, there's no qualification in terms of like this is good and this is bad based on genre.
Right.
And they also have an understanding that when Kiss came over in the 70s, they were like, yeah, of course we get this. It's kabuki theater.
Oh, right.
Serious. Like, they're not Satanists.
Right.
They're just entertainers, and they're good. They're really going all out. It's great. We love it, right? And Marty Friedman's like, discussing, like, we're talking about this one act that he saw where the guy they came out really Kiss-style, big costumes, really aggressive music, and just, like, tearing up the stage, like, burning things down. And then the band departs, and the lead singer sits down at a grand piano and plays the schmaltziest, romantic, like just like kind of like song, and they're like, yep, that's totally normal, that's nothing wrong with that.
Don't forget you can subscribe to our full audio episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere you find your audio podcasts. The full episodes, highlights, and our live off-the-floor performance videos can be found at our YouTube channel, and you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at the AVB Podcast. Of course, you'll find links to our incredible sponsors and this week's guest in the description below. The AVB Podcast is part of the Border City Network. Find more great content at bordercitynetwork.com. See you next time, folks. Bye-bye.